Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimesh Radia, and I'm your host. I always love starting every episode by saying thank you. I feel so blessed with this podcast, the people it's reaching, the impact it's having, the messages I get on a weekly basis about people finding this podcast when they need it most. Before we always start recording, we'll always do a grounding. We'll always invite those people that are ready to listen and those that, whatever we channel is ready for. So if you're a regular listener, thank you. If this is your first time, welcome. Be open to receiving messages from your guides and through our words. And I truly hope you feel the magic in our intention. If you're getting messages, if you have any feedback, please do let us know. We always love receiving that feedback. I am an Akashic record reader, Akashic trainer, podcast host, podcast creator, as well as a spiritual coach and mentor. I get to guide people on their journey, hold their space. I feel like so many of us are going through a shift and awakening. And what we do is we guide you to you. We hold your space. We never tell you what to do. We always help you to understand your programming, releasing your programming, to taking you back to your core self. Love what I get to do. I feel so very blessed with it. And this podcast and also the mentorship and everything I do wouldn't be where it is today without my beautiful co-host, introducing the amazing, the stunning, the healer extraordinaire, and published author, Stacey Brown. Stacey, now I've got to do it. Please introduce yourself.
Hey friends, it's so good to be back. Really looking forward to this episode. It definitely holds a special place in my heart. My name is Stacey. I'm an intuitive. I do readings for people from around the world. I'm also an Akashic record reader and a spiritual coach and mentor. And yes, I am a published author. My book, Journey to Soul Center, Discovering the Gift of Surrender, is available on Amazon and Audible. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. It is a powerful story of my journey of healing after a traumatic event with my son. And it is something that Nimesh and I worked really hard on together. And I want to share it with as many people as I can. Really looking forward to this episode today, Nims.
Yeah, so am I. And, Stacey, you've in many ways inspired this episode. And, but not just you, it's also from many clients. I hear the word more and more recently, I'm feeling anxious or anxiety. And I get it. I mean, right now, I resonate so much. Right now, the planet is going through such a shift. We're all going through so much change, so much, change naturally brings anxiety, but it's also, there's just a lot. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of us going through a shift. And, really what we're talking about today is anxiety as a spiritual messenger. The first thing I'd say is, look, if you are feeling chronic anxiety, feeling it really kind of, listen to the episode, of course, and get any insights, but also get medical advice. This episode and this what we share isn't definitely not as a replacement. If you feel like you need, the support, please do reach out and get the necessary support and help you need. But it's also what we're here to talk about today is that anxiety and the feelings it brings in you and the messages it could represent. I know for me, my level of anxiety is a little different in terms of I can feel myself shifting. I can feel myself being nervous around it, being anxious about it, being frustrated. But I know when Stacey talks about the anxiety she's feeling, and yes, she's definitely going through humanly much more of a shift than most of us. But I know, it's like when I hear her say the word, I'm feeling anxious, I feel it at a soul level. So Stacey, I'd love for you to kind of introduce this topic a bit more. I know normally I do, but what does it mean to you when I talk about, anxiety as a spiritual messenger?
So I think it's really important to understand that anxiety can come from different places. And sometimes it absolutely can be a sign of something spiritual, a breakthrough, something is about to happen. For me, the history of anxiety started really young in childhood. and came from my upbringing and feeling like everything I did was performance based and feeling a lot of pressure around that, which was super challenging. And as I have gotten older, that anxiety has followed me into my adult life, but it comes from different places at different times. There are times where the anxiety kicks up in that childhood reminiscent way. And there are times where I feel that anxious feeling and I recognize that I'm on the brink of something shifting. I think sometimes for those of us who struggle with anxiety, it can be really hard to differentiate one from the other. When we're feeling anxious and it's got some kind of meaning to it, and when we're feeling anxious because it's something that's familiar. And I think it's really, really important to dial in and check in with yourself and see where that anxiety is coming from. You know, I heard something really powerful yesterday. And so I don't take it lightly that we chose this topic and that I heard something about it, but I just want to share this with people who struggle with anxiety. The person who was speaking was explaining that a lot of times we will talk about anxiety by saying, my anxiety is, and fill in the blank, my anxiety. And we use it as part of our identity when we talk about it in that way. And so one of the things that has been brought to my attention is I may be feeling anxious, but I don't have to call it my anxiety, because when I do that, I bring it into part of my identity instead of something I'm feeling. And this was a really powerful aha moment for me yesterday, because when I've talked about anxiety in the past, I've always referred to it as my anxiety. And by doing that, I'm bringing it into part of my identity instead of something that I'm feeling. And so I just wanted to share this with anybody who struggles with this same thing, because what the way that we talk about it, even the way we talk about it, matters. How we approach it, what we say about it, how we identify with it is really, really important. So I would say that I'm someone who struggles with anxiety at times, sometimes more significantly than others, but I don't want to continue to use it as part of my identity. Okay, so that just might be a little tidbit that helps somebody who's listening. So one of the things I've found in this season is as I've been feeling anxious, it's change. And change can bring about anxious feelings, right? It can have us feeling like we're going into a territory that's unfamiliar, something unknown, and that can bring about a lot of insecurity and self-doubt as well. So I think it's really important to check in with yourself on a regular basis and see where this is coming from. Usually what happens with me is the feeling arises, and then I start trying to say, okay, where is this coming from? Is this coming from a specific experience that I'm having? Is this something that's from the past that's coming up? And is this something I need to address now? So these are all things that I'm learning as I go. But I absolutely feel like the more dialed in I am, the easier it is to manage. And sometimes I let it get out of control, just like anybody. Anybody who deals with this kind of a challenge, you can face times where you feel like you're spinning and you're not going anywhere, right? You're ruminating about what might happen, what could happen, what did happen, what's going to happen next. And this can cause a lot of churning. But I absolutely believe that some of the spiritual practices that we've talked about here are super helpful to anybody who's struggling. And we're going to get into that in a little bit here and talk about the different ways that you can deal with the anxious feelings and navigate them so they don't rule your world.
So much power, Stacey, in what you just talked about. I guess one of the first things that springs to mind is the language that we use when we have an own internal conversation. it's so powerful. I mean, we talk a lot about on this podcast about changing your question, right? It's that increasing your awareness is done by changing the question. Whatever you're going through, how is it serving you? How is it expanding you? What it's here to teach you? But also the internal language of how you identify yourself, right? Is that, as of somebody that's always been anxious, or also, if you're a Reiki master, or I am a Reiki master, that's one of your gifts, one of your modalities. So maybe a recommendation is just to be aware of how you talk to yourself for a few days. And Stacey's example, if you do feel anxious, what words do you use when you have a conversation about it with yourself? The other thing that Stacey talked about was really kind of identifying where the anxiety is coming from, and super, super powerful it's how often do we go outside for answers when I feel like our own internal intuition, not just our physical body, all four of our bodies, and has so much information, and that should always be the first place to check in. So I always like to, when working with clients, ask them to recheck in. And if you're feeling anxious, how much of that anxiety is yours? How much of that are you feeling from the planet? And how much of that are you feeling from other people around you? And ask them to put a percentage on it. That awareness, knowing that some of your anxiety is coming from outside and not from you, actually really does help. Because then the other thing you can do is, if it's not yours, you can ask your guides. You can say, well, you know what, I return anything that's not mine to source. And the intention you put into that is really important, right? If you believe that you can really take parts of the feelings that you're feeling anxious and return it to source because it's not yours, then you'll feel the lift. Maybe you've got to do that for a period of time or a few days to really feel the shift. So Stacey, you know what I'm going to do, right? I love putting you on the spot. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but if you were to tap into your anxiety and just do what I said, give it 3 numbers. What percentage is yours? What percentage is it the shift the planet's going through? And what percentage is it coming from people around you? What percentage would you say is yours to begin with?
I would say probably 50% is mine. And the other 50% is a mix of what people are feeling around me and what the planet is going through. So I would say it's an equal mix of my own stuff right now in this season of waiting that I'm in, and what the planet is going through. So I definitely feel like it's a combination, and it feels like a pretty equal combination.
How does it feel when I say to you, the parts that are not yours, return it to source? Is that something you feel you can do?
I think it's something that I do multiple times a day. I absolutely feel like when I'm feeling it, I try to check in and say, is this mine? And if it's not, I am returning it to source. And I would say this is something that I'm actively doing on a regular basis, not just occasionally, but I check in with myself multiple times a day and kind of send it back if it's not mine.
Beautiful. And this is, just something I'd recommend we all do, right? If you're feeling something, maybe it's anxiety, maybe you're feeling angry, maybe you're feeling unsettled, check in, because it may not be yours, right? You may be empathically taken on someone else's energy. So it's always good to check in with yourself. And then the parts that are not yours, return it to source. And going back to anxiety and kind of what it serves. Stacey, I'm conscious you haven't actually shared why you're feeling anxious, and I don't want to assume that people know. So I'm going to ask you to share it in a second. But I just wanted to, anxiety and actually everything we're feeling, the planet is going through so much, right? There's so much pain, there's so much anxiety, there's so much uncertainty around in the planet right now. We're all kind of going through a shift, and so there is energy on the planet where the planet is going through a shift. And look at all the politics, the wars, and the weather and all these natural disasters, and so much is happening. And of course, we're going to feel the pain that's coming from these other places and the anxiety of others. So this is why I feel right now it's even more important to check in with yourself. Because when you're feeling anxiety, it could be an early warning system of an energetic misalignment. So many things when your body is such a good barometer. So check in with yourself. What if it is an early warning system for energetic misalignment? What if it is that your external world is going through such a shift, which Stacey's going to talk about her world in a second, is going through such a shift that anxiety is a natural thing. Change for humans, a lot of people say, I love change. Yeah, I would say most people love change when they see it coming. When it's so drastic and you don't know what your future holds, it is scary. So acknowledge the fear, acknowledge the feeling. Because sometimes, a lot of people say, oh, positive mental attitude, and sure, have a positive mental, but acknowledge how you're feeling. Because when you push your feelings away, what you're doing is you're giving it power. When you acknowledge it, you're taking some of that power back. And is that like such an amazing fix? It fixes everything? No, because I know with the conversation I had with Stacey, there's no silver bullet. There's no magic formula apart from sometimes you're a spirit, you're a soul having a human experience, and you've got to go through something. But at the same time, our guides, the universe, are not going to stop us having that human experience. But I do feel they want to support us. And it's being open to that support. It's like for Stacey, having this conversation on the podcast. I know, because I have this conversation all the time, that we process so much on this podcast. So maybe this podcast is a message. If you're listening, in a way, it's your guide sending you a message to maybe look at things a little differently. Maybe a little bit by little bit, you'll start to understand where the anxiety is coming from. Because I do feel that sometimes anxiety is a message. It is that you're going through a shift. It is that, maybe it's an early warning system, and then you've got to really kind of look at your priorities, your boundaries, and we'll talk more about that. But Stacey, I'd love for you to talk a bit more about what's happening in your human world, because I feel like people are able to empathize if they're going through a lot of change too. So please do share.
Yeah, this has been a really challenging season for me, friends. I've been in a long distance relationship, very long distance relationship for 2 years now. And in May, I made the decision to apply for a visa to move to the UK to be with my partner. And we were told that process was going to take 12 weeks max. And we hit 12 weeks at the end of July and have received some very broken communication with the UK as far as visa and immigration goes. And we're just in this holding pattern right now where they're telling us basically we need information from them and they're telling us to wait. And they're not giving us any new timeline or deadline for approval or denial or, any sort of answer. And so it has left me feeling like I am in this bizarre holding pattern that has left me feeling so uncertain about the future. It's just one giant question mark. And I've been waiting months on an answer, and now there's no end in sight. And every single day when I wake up, the first thing I do is check that email and see if we've gotten an answer. And when we haven't gotten an answer, I start churning about when we're going to get an answer and what the answer is going to be and what is it going to look like and how much longer am I going to be here and what am I supposed to do? And it sends me on this kind of path of spiraling that I have to work really hard to regulate in order to do the work that I'm meant to do. And I just look at this situation as another life lesson. And it's interesting because I feel like I go through these life lessons and then clients come into my orbit who are dealing with something similar. And I'm there to navigate with them through it after my experiences. And so I don't want to let this rule my world. I don't want to let it become something that is so overpowering that I'm not experiencing my life. And I'll be honest, there are days where it absolutely gets to me more than others. You know, if I haven't gotten a good night's sleep, if I've been tossing and turning, if I have a busy day, if I'm stressed, um, it tends to exacerbate the anxious feelings. But then there are other days where I feel like I'm able to navigate it so much better because I'm using the skills that I know I need to be using in order to help me with this season of waiting. And my friends, if you are churning right now and you are anxious and you are going through a season of waiting, or you're anticipating change coming and you're not sure what it's going to look like, I want you to know it is completely normal and acceptable to feel anxious about what's coming. Okay. That is a perfectly acceptable thing to feel. And I don't want to dismiss the importance of the signals that having anxiety can bring us, because sometimes it signals that there's something we need to address, right? And so I want you to really feel my words when I say it. There is nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to being an anxious person or having anxious feelings. It's just something that you've been given as part of your challenge that I feel we need to work hard to overcome. And there are ways that we can do that. There are things that we can do. I know for me, writing has always been a powerful outlet, and it continues to be a powerful outlet in this season. It gives me a space to process the things that I might not otherwise process. It gives me a space to break down exactly what I'm feeling and understand it and unpack it and what's causing it, right? Like Nimesh was asking earlier, is it mine or is it someone else's? When I sit down and write, it gives me a space to decipher where those anxious feelings are coming from and if they're mine or if they're someone else's. And it also gives me the opportunity to figure out what I'm going to do with it in my day. Am I going to let it take over? Or am I going to use these tools that I have to put this nervousness about what's going to happen to the side and trust that everything is working out for my highest good? I think that anxiety sometimes can be a sign that we're not trusting that the universe has our back. And sometimes we need to be reminded of that.
I should go on a t-shirt. University has our back, and sometimes we need to get reminded of that. That resonates so much. It's just, and I get it's easy for me to say this sometimes, but I really believe that everything that's happening to us is happening for us. So understanding what you're going through and how it's serving you, and asking those questions, and some of what Stacey was just talking about, and looking and sitting with inside yourself and asking, because we've taken on so much in this lifetime, so much ancestral personal karma. We're releasing so much, for so many of us. As an example, our blood family are not here to expand, to love us. They're here to expand us. And so many of our relationships are coming to an end, so many soul contracts, and we're going through so much. It feels like, last 6 months we've been closing so many, so maybe even longer, closing so many cycles. And it feels like we're going through things in maybe 3-6 months that would have taken us lifetimes. So being gentle with yourself, as Stacey was talking about, is really important. Sitting with yourself and understanding and accepting whatever you're going through, because sometimes anxiety comes from you resisting change and being fearful of change. So really sitting and journaling about how is feeling anxious serving you, where is it coming from, is it can lead to so much insight. And also checking with your guides and say, you know what, give me some insight. Because, like I said, feeling anxious could be an early warning system. It could be, your heightened sensitivity to what's happening inside and around, and maybe the anxiety, like we said, it's not yours. What if feeling that heightened sensitivity, that anxiety, is a gift, not a flaw? What if it allows you to connect to people at a deeper level? And sometimes anxiety comes just before we're about to have a shift. So it's that really sitting with yourself and guiding. And sure, you can also ask for help and support, right? You can book an Akashic record reading with us, and it gives you an insight. We can connect with your guides. Akashic records, a record of everything your soul's been through. So if you're looking for insight into what you brought into this life or karma you're here to release, then sure, book a reading. And the way that me and Stacey do the reading is unique. You get a reading from a divine masculine, divine feminine. There's no guarantees because it really is led by your guides, but maybe that's something that helps too. But honestly, sitting with it, integrating it, asking those questions, because it could also be a past life echo, right? It could be some karma you need to release. Right now, our soul is being stretched for sure. We're being pushed to go through some kind of massive breakthrough. I feel like we're all going through something, and that in itself is also going to bring anxiety. But distinguishing between the source of anxiety, like we've already said, is really important. Is it energetic? Is it somebody else's? Using your intuition, the soul whispers that are coming. Is it conditioned? The Stacey are talking about language. Is it something you're so used to that you've just accepted as part of who you are? Checking with yourself is so, so important. The other thing we always talk about in this episode is self-care. This podcast is self-care. When we're going through a spiritual journey, sometimes we look for like this big epiphany, this big message from our guides, and we get frustrated. But doing the basics is such an important part of the spiritual journey in terms of journaling, we already talked about, but grounding, and at the beginning of every session, me and Stacey both, when we're working with clients, we always do a grounding meditation. So you can definitely kind of just do that via meditation. But even better for me is actually going out in nature and just walking barefoot and allowing Mother Nature to ground me. But there's so much power inside you. And the other thing that's really, it keeps coming up with clients recently is movement. Just transmuting the energy through movement, whether it's dance, singing, shaking, yoga, walking in nature. Movement, we're having a human experience. And movement, if you go back to when humans were created, we weren't meant to be sitting all day. And meditating, using crystals, creating an altar, having that safe space to really kind of hold your space is really, really important. Who are the people in your life? Are they making you anxious? Are you having to lower your vibration? Or are you attracting people who are really holding your space and holding you up? Because what you feed yourself is such a big clue, as in not just the food you eat or what you drink, but also what you watch, what you listen to, the company you keep. All of that, if it's not serving you, is to manifest new people coming in, is also really important. Stacey, what would you advise people to do who are feeling anxious and kind of everything you've been through? What would you? I know you mentioned journaling, but what else could they do to process and understand their anxiety?
So, one of the things that I have been fiercely dedicated to in this season is getting out in nature. It's summertime, the weather's warm, and I have this little sitting area outside that I've been going to on a regular basis and allowing myself the space to connect with nature. It definitely calms me, whether the sun is shining, whether it's raining, like whatever the weather is, it it is still a beautiful reset to be outside and allow myself the space to be one with nature. And I find that it kind of slows my racing thoughts down. It gives me a space to be introspective and reflective. And it gives me a sense of connection with something greater than myself. So I absolutely have found that to be super helpful. I know I talked about writing. I think that's another really powerful one. I also think it's really important to make sure that you're getting your basic needs met. I have found when I'm feeling anxious that my basic self-care isn't as good as far as like sleeping, eating, those typical things that we need to do to survive become a little bit more daunting to make happen. And yet they're really important, right? Making sure that I am getting to bed at a reasonable time, that I'm getting the sleep that I need, because if I'm not rested, then the anxiety creeps in even more and tends to be heightened. So I try to do things that I know are going to help keep me grounded. And they might seem like foundational things, but if you're somebody who deals with anxiety, it is something really significant to make sure that those basic needs are being met, because even those things can feel really hard to get done. I also believe that exercise is really powerful. I have found this season it has been really challenging for me to get in regular exercise, but I know that when I do, it makes a big difference in how I feel. And it allows my heart to get pumping and my body to get moving. And it's a good natural release to those anxious feelings. Another thing that I think is really powerful is reading something uplifting, reading something spiritual, reading something that gets you to go deeper and think about the bigger picture can also be a really beautiful thing to do, and something that's really helpful. If you're not somebody who enjoys writing, maybe reading or listening to a podcast is something that will help you to process some of what you're going through. And I really like the idea of getting my brain working. So listening to something or reading something that distracts me from what I'm feeling, sometimes we just need that to break us out of a cycle, because we can get in these anxious cycles where we're spinning our wheels and we don't know how to get it to stop. But when we provide ourselves with some kind of a healthy distraction, it can slow down those racing thoughts and allow us to better process what we're actually going through and the source of where it's coming from. I absolutely believe in practicing the pause. We've talked about this on the podcast often. And this is something that I started integrating into my life when my kids were younger. I had an incident where one of my kids was doing something and I lost my shit. And I had a friend point out to me, like, what are you doing? Like, take a break. And from that moment on, I started practicing the pause before I responded to anything that was happening around me. And it's made a huge difference in how I approach things, because a lot of times when you're feeling anxious, you want to spout off whatever's on the top of your head, and it might not be the most appropriate thing to be bringing up. But if you allow yourself a space to process your thoughts and be reflective and introspective, it slows down some of what's going on and allows you to better regulate. And so all of these things are tactics that I use to help myself through those challenging times. I can tell you, I woke up this morning with a heavy heart, feeling anxious, and I just threw myself into my self-care routine today. I knew that I was going to do my makeup. I knew I was going to do my hair. I knew I was going to take a nice hot shower. And I just made sure that I stayed focused and present in the moment. My biggest piece of advice to anyone who is struggling with anxiety is to work on bringing yourself back to the present moment. When you're in the now and you're not thinking about the future, that's when the anxiety really does calm down, because you recognize in this moment you're safe. In this moment, you're protected. In this moment, everything is okay. When we start anticipating what's coming next, the anxiety grows and grows and grows because we are anticipating and thinking about things that haven't happened yet. And when you get into that cycle, it can be really hard to break it. So taking some of these things that we're talking about and using them as tools can make a huge difference in how you feel.
Powerful advice, Stacey. Thank you for that. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. The one thing I'll add, which I'm not sure you mentioned, is just breathing. Really interesting, right? A natural thing we do all the time, but deep breaths, using the 4-4 technique and breathing in for 4 seconds, holding it 4 seconds, and breathing out 4 seconds. It's prana, right? There's a life force inside of us and allows you to connect. And yes, Stacey's talking about physical activity. I work with a personal trainer too now, right? So I recognize that I need to, and my physical body needs more self-care. I mean, I love the spiritual part. I'm always floating around with the guides, but I also need to make sure I look after the vessel. So taking that time is really important. And, ultimately the anxiety is here to teach you something, right? And recognizing that, and it's such a big part of it, setting the boundaries with the people around you and making sure you look after yourself and your self-care, like we talked about. Maybe there's some past life karma you're holding on to, and maybe there's the relationships in your life, or the soul contract's complete and you're still holding on to it. There's so many clues the universe gives you. Are you listening? Are you watching? It is serving you, and it's just that, are you giving your power away to your anxiety? Are you being tested because you're something new and something amazing is coming, but there's that period just before you're going through a massive shift where your world seems to be in chaos. That's normally a sign that you're just about to go through the shift. Your anxiety is it can be deliberate. It can take over you. You can't do anything. But if you really accept it's not the enemy, what if you can see it's an ally calling you to pay attention? Track your anxiety. When does it come? Is it there all the time? Is it the first thing Stacey talked about, waking up with anxiety? Does it come first thing in the morning, or does it come around certain people, or when you're thinking about certain things? Just insight, journaling, listen to the inner voice, checking with yourself is so, so important right now. And Stacey said it earlier, remind yourself you're not your anxieties. Don't let it define you. You are the awareness holding the anxiety, and it is serving you some kind of way. So Stacey, as we're getting ready to close this episode out, do you have any final bits of information, anything you want to share with our audience, any journal prompts that are in your awareness? Please do share with us.
I want to encourage our listeners to recognize that the anxiety that you're feeling doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. I really want to stress that. When you're somebody who, deals with the feeling of anxiety, sometimes you can feel like there's something wrong with you, or you're not good enough, or why can't I see through this, or why am I not stronger? And I want you all to know that it is not a sign of how strong you are. It is not a sign of how good you are or whether you're good enough. It's simply something that you're feeling that needs to be addressed and acknowledged and processed in a healthy way. And I would really encourage you to jot down some of the techniques that we've talked about today. Experiment with what works for you and start working on cultivating a plan that better addresses what you're feeling. I would also encourage you to sit with your journal and ask yourself, is this mine or is it someone else's? And see what comes up. right? Are you actually feeling anxious because of something that's in your reality? Or is it the influence of somebody else around you? And then finally, if you're still struggling with it, I encourage you to get medical attention if needed. Absolutely. And I also encourage you to reach out to us and consider booking an Akashic record reading. It can bring so much clarity in understanding who you are, in understanding why you're here, in understanding some of the things that have happened to you in past lives that might clarify some of what you're feeling. But don't hide. Don't allow yourself to close yourself off to other people simply because you're feeling anxious. Allow yourself to be open with the people around you and let them know what you're experiencing. The more support you have in this process of uncovering your anxiety, the more support that you have, the better. I absolutely believe in the power of having help. I make sure that I am surrounded by support in this season. And therapy has been a great option for me as well, and has allowed me a space to understand myself a little bit more. And that's one of the beautiful things that Nimesh and I do is we help people to better understand who they are and why they're here. And that alone can calm so much of the anxious feelings. So if you need help and support, reach out to us, reach out to a medical professional. Don't hide. There's no good that comes from hiding. Be you and know that this is something you're feeling. It's not your identity.
I love that, Stacey. So powerful. And couldn't agree more about getting medical help. So important if you feel like you need it. And the other message that's been coming out a lot with clients recently is the shift that we're going through. It's like the phase that we've just been through has all been about self. It's like, I feel like so many of us are coming out of a cocoon, which has felt lonely. It has felt isolating. And I feel like we had to go through that phase of isolation. But what if now we're coming out of that phase and now is the time to ask for help. Now is the time to look for that community because, like I said, it's coming up. I've had the conversation about the cocoon so many times this week. It's crazy. So I did an episode around coming out of the cocoon. I did a meditation that went with it. I think it's episode 248, 249, if on memory. But if you feel like you're coming out of cocoon or if you feel like you need a meditation to support you, then yeah, listen to that meditation. I do a solo episode from time to time. And Stacey talked about our mentorship. It's if you're feeling anxious and checking with it, if it is a spiritual shift, then 100% reach out. Remember your anxiety isn't here to hold you back. What if it's here to guide you towards a deeper alignment with your soul? Listen to yourself with compassion because the voice you use is so important. What if the anxiety is a powerful message for you, for your growth and awakening? If you've been going through something, then reach out to us. I am sending you so much love and light. I'm sure Stacey's too. This is a period for you. Shining your light. It's not normal. It's not something we're trying to do. But focusing on you, looking after your self-care routine is such a big part. So if you are feeling anxious, maybe it's time to make a shift and really put you first. I'm sending so much love and light out to everybody. Thank you for being here. Stacey, as always, thank you for being so vulnerable. So much sharing. Sending you the biggest hug too. And hopefully you get the answers you've been looking for very, very soon. I feel like it's coming soon for you, but I also feel like the universe is kind of messing a little bit and keeping you on your toes. But I really trust whatever's for your future will come through. So sending you the biggest hug too, and we'll be back soon. Thank you, everybody. Love and light. Bye for now.